Hi, I am Sophia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
My sister Emma had always been the star of our family. While I was quiet and kept to myself, Emma was magnetic, valedictorian, Harvard MBA, married to Dr. Richard Chin, a successful cardiologist. She was everything our parents had dreamed of: successful, connected, and most importantly, visible. I was the opposite. I'd graduated from a state school with a degree in computer science that our parents barely acknowledged. No fancy wedding, no prestigious career announcements, no reason for them to brag at country club dinners. I worked from home doing what Mom dismissively called computer stuff, living in a modest apartment across town. At family gatherings, the contrast was painful. Emma would arrive in her Mercedes, Richard in tow, regaling everyone with stories about her startup, Mitchell Tech Solutions. She'd founded it 4 years ago, an AI-powered analytics platform that promised to revolutionize data interpretation for enterprise clients. The reality was less impressive: repackaged existing software with a sleek interface and aggressive marketing. But our parents didn't care about the technical details. They cared that Emma was a founder, a CEO, someone they could mention at dinner parties. Forbes had featured her in a 30 under 35 listicle. She spoke at tech conferences. She had a LinkedIn following of 47,000. I had none of that. And they never let me forget it. "What exactly do you do again?" Uncle Tom would ask at every holiday, genuinely unable to remember. "Consulting," I'd reply. "For who?" "Various clients." The conversation would die there, and someone would redirect to Emma's latest business achievement. It had been this way for years. I'd stopped trying to explain. What was the point? They'd already decided who I was: the disappointing daughter who couldn't match her sister's success. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd built something far larger than Emma's startup. Something I'd deliberately kept invisible. The truth they never saw. While Emma was getting her MBA, I was coding in my apartment 18 hours a day. I'd developed a proprietary algorithm for predictive market analysis. Not the surface-level analytics Emma's company sold, but deep machine learning that could identify market trends before they became visible to traditional analysts. I didn't pitch it to investors. I didn't give TED Talks or build a social media presence. I used it. I started with $50,000 I'd saved and invested it according to my algorithm's predictions. Within 6 months, I'd turned it into $400,000. Within 2 years, $8 million. By the time Emma founded Mitchell Tech Solutions, I was managing a portfolio worth $140 million. I'd incorporated under an LLC with a deliberately generic name: Apex Strategic Investments. No website, no press releases, no conferences. Just results. My clients were ultra-high net worth individuals and family offices who valued discretion above all else. They found me through referrals, never advertising. I lived modestly because I wanted to. The apartment, the 10-year-old Honda, the simple lifestyle. It was strategic. It allowed me to move through the world without attracting the attention that had made Emma's life so performative. And it let me watch my family's true nature reveal itself year after year. Every dismissive comment, every comparison, every time they forgot to invite me to a family event because I wouldn't fit in with the successful crowd, I documented it all. Not for revenge. For clarity. I wanted to know who they really were when they thought I had nothing to offer them. The answer was clear: they were users. And Emma was the worst of them all. 3 years ago, the investment, Mitchell Tech Solutions, was failing. Emma had been running it for 18 months, burning through her initial angel funding with nothing to show but a mediocre product and declining interest from potential clients. She'd maxed out credit cards, taken a second mortgage on the house she and Richard had bought, and was facing bankruptcy. He came to me once, just once, during that desperate period. It was February, bitterly cold. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, which should have been my first clue that something was wrong. Emma never visited me. Why would she? My life wasn't interesting enough. "I need advice," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Business advice." I let her in. She sat on my worn couch and explained her situation. The company was hemorrhaging money, investors were walking away, and she had 3 months before everything collapsed. Richard didn't know how bad it was. Our parents definitely didn't know. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked at her. This was the sister who'd told our parents I wasn't sophisticated enough to attend her wedding rehearsal dinner, who'd uninvited me from her birthday celebration because the guest list was very carefully curated, who'd laughed when Dad said I'd probably end up working retail eventually. And now she needed help. You need capital, I said. At least $3 million to stabilize operations, restructure your debt, and fund 18 months of runway. She laughed bitterly. Where am I supposed to get $3 million? Everyone's rejected us. There are silent partners, I said carefully. Investors who provide capital without taking board seats or operational control. They're hard to find, but they exist. Her eyes lit up. Do you know any? I paused, then nodded. I might know someone. Let me make some calls. She left that day with hope. She didn't hug me or thank me warmly. She just said, "Let me know what you find out," and drove away in her Mercedes. 2 weeks later, her company received a term sheet from Apex Strategic Investments, LLC. $3.2 million in exchange for quarterly financial reports and a modest 8% annual return. No board seat, no operational input, no public acknowledgement required. The contract specified complete anonymity. The investor's identity would never be revealed. Emma signed within 48 hours. I'd saved her company. She never knew it was me. The years of mockery. With my capital, Mitchell Tech Solutions stabilized. Emma restructured operations, hired a better sales team, and within a year was closing deals with mid-size enterprises. The company wasn't revolutionary, but it was profitable. Emma's reputation rebuilt. Forbes mentioned her again. She started getting invited to speak at conferences. And the mockery of me intensified. "Still doing your little consulting thing?" she'd ask at Thanksgiving, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Must be nice having so much free time," Mom would add. No real responsibilities. At Emma's company anniversary party, a lavish event at a downtown hotel, she gave a speech thanking her incredible investors who believed in her vision. She never once thought that one of those investors might be in the room. I'd attended as her sister, not as the person who'd funded her entire comeback. During the cocktail hour, I overheard her talking to a group of her executive friends. "My sister's here somewhere," Emma said, scanning the room dismissively. "She does computer consulting or something. Very low level. We're not really sure how she supports herself, honestly. Probably still getting help from my parents." The group laughed politely. One of them asked if I'd ever considered joining Mitchell Tech. "God, no," Emma said. "She doesn't have the skills for what we do. This is enterprise-level technology. She's more basic IT support level, I think." I stood 20 feet away holding my wine, watching her performance. My company, the one I'd built from nothing, managed $340 million in assets at that point. I'd recently closed a deal advising a Fortune 100 company on a $50 million acquisition. My clients included 3 billionaires and a sovereign wealth fund. And my sister thought I did basic IT support. I didn't correct her. I wanted to see how far she'd go. This Christmas, the investigation. The invitation to Christmas dinner came with a caveat. Mom called me 3 weeks before the holiday. "Emma has something important to share with the family," she said. "A business announcement." She asked that everyone attend. "Can you make it?" "Of course," I said. "Good. And Emma mentioned she'd prefer if you dressed appropriately. Nothing too casual. These are important business people she's inviting." Important business people at a family Christmas. That should have been my warning. The dinner was at my parents' house, a sprawling colonial they'd bought when Emma graduated from Harvard. 43 people attended. Extended family, Emma's in-laws, and a collection of her business associates and their spouses. The dining room had been professionally catered. There was a photographer. I arrived in a simple black dress and minimal jewelry. Emma greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So glad you could make it," she said. "This is going to be a very memorable evening." I nodded and moved past her into the crowd. I recognized several faces. Her board members, her head of sales, Richard's colleagues from the hospital. This wasn't a family gathering. It was a performance. Dinner was served at 7. I sat at the end of one table between Aunt Carol and a woman I didn't recognize who introduced herself as Emma's business attorney. The attorney made polite conversation about holiday plans, clearly having no idea who I was beyond Emma's sister. After the main course, Emma stood up and clinked her glass. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began. "I wanted to gather everyone I care about to share something important. Mitchell Tech Solutions has had an incredible year. We've tripled our revenue, expanded to 3 new markets, and just closed our Series B funding round at a $48 million valuation." The room applauded. Dad beamed with pride. Mom dabbed at her eyes emotionally. "But success requires honesty," Emma continued, her tone shifting. "And transparency. Especially within family." My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. For years my sister has told us she works in consulting. That she's successful in her own right. But none of us have ever really understood what she does or how she supports herself. Emma's eyes found mine across the room. It's been a source of concern. For all of us. Heads turned toward me. I kept my face neutral. "So I did what any responsible family member would do," Emma said. "I hired a professional investigator. Someone with 20 years of FBI experience. Someone who could finally give us the truth about what my sister actually does for a living." The room buzzed with whispers. I saw faces ranging from curiosity to pity. Aunt Carol touched my arm sympathetically. Emma gestured toward a man standing near the doorway, mid-50s gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. "This is Gary Reynolds, principal investigator at Reynolds Security Services. I paid him $12,000 to conduct a comprehensive background investigation on my sister. And tonight he's going to share his findings with all of you." She looked directly at me, triumph evident in her expression. "Everyone will finally see the truth." Dad nodded approvingly. Mom looked relieved, as if a long-standing family mystery was about to be solved. Richard had his phone out, presumably ready to record the moment. I said nothing. I simply pulled out my phone and, under the table, opened my secure messaging app. I typed quickly. "Withdraw all capital from Mitchell Tech Solutions. Effective immediately. Provide written notice of contract termination per clause 7.3. Initiate fund transfer by end of business tomorrow." I hit send. The message went to my head of operations at Apex Strategic Investments. Within seconds I received a confirmation. "Understood. Executing withdrawal. Total amount including accrued returns, $4.1 million. Legal notice will be sent within the hour." I set my phone face down on the table and looked up at Emma. She was smiling, introducing Gary Reynolds to the room, explaining his credentials and the thoroughness of his investigation. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned slightly but ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. And again. Her smile faltered. She pulled her phone out, looked at the screen, and her face went pale. The unraveling. Excuse me one moment," Emma said, her voice tight. She stepped away from the center of the room, phone pressed to her ear. The room murmured with confusion. Gary Reynolds stood awkwardly with his briefcase, waiting for his cue. Dad started to stand, concerned, but Mom pulled him back down. I watched Emma's face as she listened to whoever was calling. Her disbelief. Panic. She ended the call and immediately received another. Then another. Her hands were shaking. Richard approached her, asking what was wrong. She waved him off, stepping into the hallway. The room grew uncomfortable. People exchanged glances. The photographer lowered her camera. After 3 minutes, though it felt like 30, Emma returned. Her makeup was smudged, her composure shattered. She looked directly at me, and for the first time in our lives, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely audible. "Privately. Right now." "I don't think so," I replied calmly. "You wanted transparency. Let's have transparency. Gary, please proceed with your presentation. I believe everyone's eager to hear what you found." Emma's attorney stood up. "Emma, what's happening? Who keeps calling?" "ICU," Emma said, her voice cracking. "And my board chairman. And my lead investor's legal team. Our primary investor just..." She stopped, pressing her hand to her forehead. "They just withdrew everything. All of it. $4.1 million. Gone." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Dad stood up. "What? How is that possible? Why would they do that?" Emma's eyes never left mine. "I don't know," she whispered. But her expression suggested she was beginning to suspect. "Gary, I said, turning to the investigator. Please continue. I'm very interested to hear what your investigation revealed. Gary Reynolds cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable with the sudden drama. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a bound report. Mrs. Chin hired me to conduct a comprehensive background investigation on her sister, he began. Employment history, financial records, business affiliations, asset verification, the full scope. He paused, looking between Emma and me. What I found was unexpected. The truth revealed. Gary opened the report to a marked page. The subject, Emma's sister, operates under multiple corporate entities. The primary one is Apex Strategic Investments, LLC, registered in Delaware. This firm manages investment portfolios for high-net-worth individuals and institutional clients. Dad frowned. Investment portfolios? What does that mean? It means, Gary continued, that she's an investment manager. A very successful one. According to the financial records I was able to verify through public filings and industry databases, Apex Strategic manages approximately $340 million in assets. The room went silent. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. That can't be right, Mom said weakly. She lives in a tiny apartment. She drives a Honda. Gary nodded. Personal lifestyle choices don't reflect business success, as I'm sure many people in this room understand. But the documentation is clear. Apex Strategic has been operational for 9 years. The firm's performance record is exceptional. Average annual returns of 23% over the past 7 years. He turned another page. The subject also holds equity positions in 14 companies, serves as a consultant to 3 Fortune 100 corporations, and recently closed an advisory deal worth $50 million. Aunt Carol's hand slipped off my arm. Uncle Tom was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. But here's where it gets interesting, Gary said, and I saw him glance at Emma with what might have been sympathy. One of Apex Strategic's investments, made 3 years ago, was $3.2 million into a company called Mitchell Tech Solutions. Emma made a sound like she'd been punched. The investment contract specified complete anonymity, Gary continued. The founder of Mitchell Tech Solutions, Emma Chin, never knew the identity of her primary investor. But according to corporate records and the LLC's registration documents, Apex Strategic Investments is wholly owned by Emma's sister. He looked at me. You saved your sister's company. You've been her silent partner for 3 years. And based on the phone calls Mrs. Chin just received, you've apparently just withdrawn that investment. The room exploded. Everyone was talking at once. Dad was demanding explanations. Richard was trying to calm Emma, who had started crying. Mom just sat frozen, her mouth open. I stood up slowly, all eyes turning to me. You wanted the truth, I said quietly, looking at Emma. You paid $12,000 for it. Gary's report is accurate. I am the founder and owner of Apex Strategic Investments. I've been managing high-level investment portfolios since I was 26 years old. I've built a career that you all dismissed as computer stuff and basic consulting, because I chose not to perform my success for an audience. I turned to the broader room. 3 years ago, Emma came to me asking for advice. Her company was failing. She was facing bankruptcy. I arranged for my firm to invest $3.2 million in Mitchell Tech Solutions. Not because she asked me to, she had no idea I could, but because I wanted to see what she'd do with a second chance. Emma was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. No, that's not possible. You couldn't, you don't. I do, I said simply. I always have. You just never looked closely enough to see it. I picked up my phone and pulled up my Forbes profile, the one from 2 years ago that featured me in an article about under-the-radar investment managers who outperform Wall Street. I held it up so the photographer could project it on the wall screen that had been set up for Emma's presentation. My face appeared 15 feet tall with the headline, The Invisible Investor, How One Woman Built a $340 million Portfolio Without Social Media. The room stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. You paid someone to investigate me to prove I was nobody, I said to Emma. What you actually proved is that you never knew me at all. Not once in 32 years did you think to ask what I was really doing. You just assumed I was failing because I wasn't performing success the way you do. But why? Emma choked out. Why hide it? Why let us think? Because I wanted to know who you really were, I interrupted. All of you. I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing to offer. And you showed me. Every dismissive comment. Every time you excluded me because I wasn't sophisticated enough. Every family event where I was an afterthought or an embarrassment. I looked at my parents. You never once asked about my work. You just decided I'd failed because I didn't brag about my success. You measured my worth by how much I performed for you, not by what I actually accomplished. Dad opened his mouth then closed it. Mom was crying now too. The investment withdrawal is permanent, I continued. Mitchell Tech Solutions has until end of business tomorrow to secure replacement funding or begin orderly shutdown procedures. My legal team will handle the contract termination details. Emma's attorney was frantically taking notes. Richard looked like he might be sick. You're going to destroy her company? Dad said, finding his voice. Your own sister's business? Out of spite. No, I said calmly. Out of honesty. Emma wanted transparency tonight. She wanted everyone to see the truth. Well, here it is. I'm not nobody. I never was. But I was her safety net and she didn't even know it. Now she'll have to build her success on her own merit, not on my capital. I walked toward the door, grabbing my coat from the rack. The room remained silent except for Emma's sobbing. At the threshold I turned back one last time. Gary, your report was thorough and accurate. Send your final invoice to my office. I'll make sure you're paid in full for exposing the truth Emma was so desperate to find. I looked at my sister, still standing in the center of the room, her triumphant Christmas gathering collapsed around her. Merry Christmas, Emma, I said quietly. I hope the truth was worth $12,000. Then I walked out into the cold December night, leaving behind the family that had never really known me at all. Aftermath. The calls started within hours. First Richard begging me to reconsider, claiming Emma didn't know, it was all a misunderstanding. Then Dad angry and demanding, insisting I had a family obligation. Then Mom crying, asking how I could be so cruel. I blocked their numbers. Emma sent emails, dozens of them over the next week. First angry, accusing me of sabotage. Then desperate, begging me to restore the funding. Then resigned, asking if we could at least talk. I never responded. Her CFO reached out through LinkedIn, trying to negotiate an extension on the withdrawal timeline. My legal team handled it. The contract was clear. Either party could terminate with written notice. I'd provided notice. The funds were withdrawn. Mitchell Tech Solutions had 72 hours to find $4.1 million in replacement capital or face immediate operational crisis. They had payroll due in 10 days. Vendor payments overdue. A major contract dependent on having adequate working capital. Emma couldn't find investors. Word had spread in the tech investment community that her primary backer had withdrawn suddenly, a major red flag. Her Series B investors started asking questions. Her board called an emergency meeting. 6 days after Christmas, Mitchell Tech Solutions announced a strategic restructuring. Translation: massive layoffs and scaled back operations. The company survived barely, but Emma's dreams of expansion died. The Forbes mentions stopped. The conference invitations dried up. Her business attorney quit. Richard filed for divorce 3 months later. Apparently, the financial stress and the revelation that Emma had taken a second mortgage without his full knowledge was too much for the marriage to survive. My parents tried to intervene, showing up at my apartment one Saturday morning. I didn't let them in. We're family, Dad said through the door. You can't just cut us off. Watch me, I replied. They haven't been back. 1 year later. I'm writing this from my actual home, not the modest apartment I maintained for appearances, but the property I bought 5 years ago. A restored farmhouse on 40 acres outside the city. It's where I've always lived when I wasn't performing humility for my family. Apex Strategic Investments continues to grow. We recently crossed $500 million in managed assets. I hired 3 new analysts and opened a second office. My clients are thrilled with our performance. Several have referred their friends. I've started accepting speaking engagements, not at flashy conferences, but at small gatherings of serious investors who value substance over performance. I'm building the reputation I always wanted. Respected, trusted, invisible to the masses. Emma's company still exists, though it's a shadow of what she'd envisioned. She's profitable on a small scale, but the rapid growth trajectory she'd promised investors never materialized. She works constantly now, no longer the polished CEO giving speeches, just an entrepreneur grinding to keep her business alive. I don't feel guilty. I gave her a chance once and she spent 3 years mocking me while building her success on my capital. The education was expensive, $4.1 million expensive, but necessary. Sometimes I think about that Christmas dinner, the look on her face when she realized what she'd done. How she'd paid $12,000 to expose herself, not me. How her performance of success collapsed the moment the foundation I'd provided was removed. I got a letter from her last month. Handwritten, forwarded through my business address. She didn't apologize, not exactly, but she acknowledged what she'd done. How she'd treated me. How she'd never really known me. I understand now why you did it, she wrote. I understand what you were trying to teach me. I'm not asking for your money back. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally see you. I see what I missed. And I'm sorry I needed to lose everything to learn how to look. The letter sat on my desk for 2 weeks. I wrote 17 different responses in my head. Finally I wrote back. Emma, you didn't lose everything. You lost my money. You still have the opportunity to build something real, something that doesn't depend on a safety net you didn't know existed. Maybe that's worth more than $4.1 million. Maybe not. Time will tell. Your sister. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship. Honestly, I don't know if I want one. But I sent the letter because despite everything there was a moment, just one moment, when she came to me for help and I gave it. That moment of vulnerability was real, even if everything that followed was performance. Maybe someday she'll find her way back to being real again. But that's her journey now, not mine. I have my own success to build, my own life to live, my own truth to honor. And this time I'm doing it on my own terms with my own capital for my own reasons. No audience required.